and he also authored an amicus brief to the Supreme Court regarding the educational benefits for minority students. This goes back to his family history, I think, where his maternal grandfather was part of India's independence movement and actually spent several years in jail in pursuit of freedom and independence during the period of Gandhi. Following Wilson Sonsini, he did teach, he was a lecturer at Stanford University and also taught law at Santa Clara University and American jurisprudence at San Francisco State. In terms of Washington presence, he was on Obama's administrative group and served as Deputy Assistant Secretary of the U.S. Department of Commerce. In 2012, he actually worked for Governor Jerry Brown. He was appointed to the Workforce Investment Board, which may be very relevant to things today. Today, he is on the following committees in Congress: the House Budget, the Armed Services Committee, and the Oversight and Reform Committees. And he's the first vice chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and serves as the assistant whip of the Democratic Party. Ro is a tireless supporter of the tech sector, and I'm sure you'll hear that today. And he thinks the tech sector should be at the forefront of U.S. economic policy because it's basically providing new opportunities to millions of Americans and to individuals around the globe. In his free time, Ro enjoys traveling, might be on hold for now, cheering for the Golden State Warriors, and watching movies. Probably more of the last point. Before jumping into the big issues, Ro, maybe you want to tell us about just your day-to-day schedule, working in Congress, at home, the stress of 24/7. Do you wear a mask while you're in meetings with colleagues? We're kind of curious. So I'll turn it over to you now. I look forward to your comments.
Well, Brian, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to address the Hong Kong Association. I know what a remarkable group you all are in terms of the contributions to the Bay Area economy, to our country. And Brian, I appreciate your many years of friendship and your counsel over the years, and really appreciate your being an intellectual resource to me. The person that I wanted to talk about in terms of our day, you know, a lot of my days, frankly, on Zoom calls and on Facebook Live. I mean, today I did a Instagram Live with Cory Booker, who's a senator of New Jersey. We talked about a farm bill we had introduced. I did a Instagram Live with Maureen Newman, who's going to be a new member of Congress from Chicago. After this, I've got an Instagram Live with Steve Kerr, who's the coach of the Warriors, and talking about essential workers. So a lot of the day is online. We are going to be voting on this $3 trillion stimulus bill that we can talk about. And that is where we do have to go in. And of course, I wear a mask and socially distance. I don't really do any in-person meetings. I haven't done any in-person meetings since this crisis has started. All of our meetings are on phone or text or Zoom. So I will go in, vote, keep social distancing, and then come out. And so that has been really the priority. I've gotten to spend time with my family, gone for walks with them while in places where there aren't that many people, so we can keep our appropriate social distance. You know, that allows me to get some sanity in this otherwise crazy time.
Would you like me to run through some questions for the board at this time and their general economic CV-19 points? Obviously, the focus on people's minds right now.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be better. I mean, I can speak about general remarks, but I think it'd be better if it's more conversational and if we get their questions and can get as many answered.
I'll start with just a question of history. So we went through the recession in 2009 to 11. I think the government allocated about $800 billion, mostly to the banking sector to kind of restart things and avoid some large-scale bankruptcies. It sort of pales in view of the trillions of dollars coming into play today. But I'm curious, did we learn anything back in the financial crisis, any lessons that can actually apply to today, other than throwing a lot of money at the issues?
Well, one lesson we learned is we do need to throw money at the issues. I mean, the spending was not sufficient in the financial crisis. They warned about inflation, which never took place, partly because, inflation, as any economist will tell you, it's the money to supply, the M2 divided by GDP, which is your output. But one of the things that happens in a recession is that the velocity of money decreases. In other words, that people aren't spending as much. And so even if you inject more money into the system, you often don't see inflation because of that decline in velocity. And as long as once you recover, you put that money, you return the money supply to where it was, you can have a robust recovery without triggering long-term inflation or long-term rise in interest rates. And that was, in my view, the lesson of 2008. And frankly, I think Jerome Powell understood that. And that's why he's, to his credit, been very aggressive with Fed policy this time around. And the Congress has been pretty aggressive with policies to get more money in people's pockets so we aren't seeing systematic unemployment. I think that the money should be better directed to small businesses and new business formations. That's critical to the economic dynamism of any country. I think we have to be investing in science and technology and productive investment that will generate a rate of return. And I've been pushing for both of those policies.
When these new bills are being presented, I'll get to a question a little bit later on the $3 trillion proposal, but a common question coming up is whether the government has a plan, any reasonable plan for paying back or funding these huge investments government's currently making. It puts everything in history into smaller boxes. So I'm curious how the discussions go in Congress on pay down.
Well, as Powell has said, it's a low interest rate. So we don't have inflation. So what is the consequence of deficits? Well, the consequence of deficit is either your interest rates will go up, in which case you're crowding out private investment. Interest rates are at an all-time low. People are willing to lend to us. Or you're going to have inflation, but we aren't seeing that. If anything, we're seeing deflationary pressures. So this suggests to me that we can borrow at this time and make sure that we aren't having massive unemployment, which would frankly cause more deficits because it would decrease our revenue. And what we have to do is ideally invest in things that are going to have output producing consequence, science, technology, small businesses that can produce things, people putting money in people's pockets that will spend it. And then make sure that once we recover and interest rates are still low, that's the time to start paying it back and paying it down. So you don't have a situation of where we have inflation or we're caught flat-footed and people stop lending to us. But we can afford to do these in crisis. What we can't afford to do is have this become habitual. But I think this is a clear crisis, and it calls for a robust response.
On that point again, a variation just recently over the weekend out of the governor's office, California started the year in January looking at maybe a $6 billion surplus. California, as I'm sure are aware, generates a lot of its revenue from taxes from capital gains.
Right.
The cities and the businesses have local taxes, property taxes. Anyway, the state now is projecting a $54 billion deficit. So yeah. Questions coming up, are there going to be bankruptcies running through cities, municipalities, and that can lead to collateral problems in all sorts of areas, employment, et cetera. So what do you see for the local governments and how they're going to survive?
This is critical. This is why our next stimulus bill that the House is going to pass is $1 trillion for state and local governments. And by the way, for county governments, which are funding our hospitals. So if we don't fund those county governments, we're not going to get the PPE to our frontline providers. We're not going to get ventilators that are necessary. We're not going to get the equipment that's necessary. So California faces huge crisis of our budget. It will mean cuts in essential services and increase in taxes unless we can get this money to states, localities, and to counties. And that's why I strongly support $1 trillion fund at this time for states, localities, and counties.
This question comes up, it's been going around and around for several years on immigration reform. And so given your background and the area, 17th district you represent, how do you foresee the immigration issue playing out? Because obviously we're starved for people in the technology area, scientists, et cetera, from abroad or going through our universities, and the prospects aren't looking so great with some pressures on green cards. And so what do you see coming through Congress or just general policy to help fix the problem, the need for those people with talent?
To come to the United States?
Right. The ability for people with technical skills, basically what fueled Silicon Valley in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, well, I think we need to recognize, and this has been the problem of Japan, right? Their per capita income has gone up, but they don't have enough capita. They don't have enough people in terms of their economy. And so what we need to do is recognize that we need nurses. I mean, this is a time to be getting nurses into the United States. It's a time to be getting those who can contribute to our economy. Most immigrants are job creators, that they add to the economy. And we need to continue to make that case that they help with startups, with new business formation, and it's absolutely critical for us.
Did you see an ability to target that? Because typically it's been put together with immigration challenges on the southern border, and so it sort of sees as and doesn't the comprehensive immigration reform board. So while people recognize the economy needs these great people from abroad, getting things together on comprehensive reform seems to be almost a mountain too high to climb.
Well, I think we can do it on jobs, and we have to realize it's not just tech jobs. I mean, there are people who are doing farm work, there are people who are doing hospitality. There are a lot of immigrants who are coming here to contribute to job creation, contribute to business formation, and that is work that we need in this country, that adds value in this country. And I think prioritizing that and trying to solve that and finding bipartisan compromise there is important.
Here's one that hits home. Read about Elon Musk with Tesla. He's threatening to move his company out of Fremont, suing the county of Alameda. So are you going to be talking to Elon Musk in person or a Zoom meeting to keep him local?
Well, Elon has our mayor and governor have resolved it. I give the mayor, Lily May, a lot of credit, and Governor Newsom credit. Elon, they have come to an agreement with Elon Musk and Tesla to operate in a way that's safe for workers. So I spoke with our mayor, I spoke with the governor's office, and they deserve credit for resolving that.
Okay, I promised not to ask about any quid pro quos here. The new bill just proposed, the $3 trillion proposal, I think it came out 2 nights ago. And as you pointed out, there's I think $1 trillion is identified for state and local governments. There's 2 questions. Are these direct subsidies, and how might they be allocated? And then other portions of the bill, are they targeted to businesses? I did see something about additional funds going directly to individuals, dollar amounts. But I'm curious, on the state, local government funding, how is that determined? Who gets what?
The funding is based on census data, on funding based on where the communities qualify, and it's not that it's need based, unfortunately. So it's usually allocated based on communities, and states and localities and counties will get it based on their population needs, and it's a fairly apportioned.
Okay. Are the states, do you see the state governments working closer with Congress? I mean, right now the state governments seem to be operating independently of the federal government. Do you see more coordination in that area?
I do.
This area?
In fact, Phil Murphy, the governor of New Jersey, just praised the $1 trillion. I mean, that's a proposal that comes directly from the Governors Association, the cities. Speaker Pelosi has been working very closely with them. And at the heart of the $3 trillion bill, I mean, is this push for helping states, localities, and counties. That's the essence of the bill. I mean, then there are also provisions for essential workers and safety, all very important. But the essence of this bill is to make sure that communities aren't ravaged by this pandemic. And as you know, states and localities can't print money, so they can't run deficits. So they need the federal government to step up.
One of the questions that came in from a board member focused on the restaurant business, but it applies to a lot of industries where, as he's stating, business interruption insurance seems to have a clear out when there's a pandemic. There's some exclusionary clauses. So, and obviously restaurants are going to be hit particularly hard with changes, social distancing, etc. Do you see any provisions in government targeting specific industries, or is that too big a challenge to?
I think it's too big a challenge to target specific industries. I think what we should have done, though, is made sure that the PPP was going to more small restaurants and hospitality industry. A lot of it went to mid-sized companies, 200, 300 employees, millions of dollars of loans. And a lot of small businesses got left out, people who actually had 20 employees at a restaurant, 20 employees at a dry cleaner. And so the new bill that passed puts more of those safeguards to say, look, we want to actually go after, get this money to small businesses. But I think targeting by industry sector often adds so much bureaucracy that it's not worth doing.
One point that came up on the payroll protection plan, where a company can, in effect, borrow for payroll, presuming it's going to be covered in the next 8 weeks, given the longer stay in place mandates, the question came up, would the government extend, instead of an 8-week period for applying the loan funds, maybe it ought to be extended to 16 or 20 weeks, because the ability to hire back is restricted right now. So a lot of those people are going to be paying back loans when they actually will maybe be hiring back individuals. So I don't know if that's come into the PPP plan discussions to extend the hiring back timeline.
Yeah. It is absolutely there, because look, if you're a restaurant and you got 8 weeks to pay it back and people aren't coming to your restaurant, and you have to get to pre-COVID level employment in 8 weeks, that's impossible. And so we have to recognize that this is not just a 2-month crisis. I think when Congress passed this, they thought, oh, a couple months and then we'll be back to our feet. This is going to be a 6-month, 9-month, year-long crisis. And we've got to recognize that people aren't going to be able to bring everyone back to employment right away.
I'm going to raise a question. It might sound political, but it's really not. Obviously, you're aware, and we're all aware of some of the IP disputes with China, and we're going to be working on trade policy in China, and also with various EU issues, trade policy. How do you see that playing out between now and November? Is all of this going to be put on hold, and it's a post-November activity, or do you think these issues are going to be talked about, addressed in any way between now and November?
I think this will be addressed between now and November. The question is it going to be addressed constructively? And what we have to do, in my view, is have a cooperative, competitive framework with China. Where there are areas we need to compete, there are areas we need to cooperate. And I think pushing a narrative of that China is just corrupt without a thorough investigation, and there's no doubt in my mind they weren't transparent, but the way to get them to reform is to call for an independent investigation by an international agency. By us stoking things, we put them in a defensive posture and are less likely to get reform. So I think it's a very delicate situation. It requires diplomacy. We need reforms from China on IP. We need reforms in terms of transparency, but being belligerent and labeling them in ways is not going to get us those reforms. And what will get us those reforms is effective diplomacies and effective leadership in international institutions.
This is an interesting question from, now this is coming in from somebody on a chat line, and it ties to your comment about, what's our position vis-a-vis China on the trade side and stoking the fires. It doesn't help right now. People have some concerns about some anti-Asian sentiments, and it's out there. Do you have anything on the positive side that looks down the road and say, well, this is just part of what we deal with America, or be some other specific ways to manage that?
Well, I think the positive side is my district in Silicon Valley, Santa Clara. We've had almost no incidents of hate. We've had great efforts at toleration and respect. And it's one of the reasons the tech economy is still doing well, given all the setbacks. We're leading still in terms of our recovery. And I think it has to do with our ability to live with one another, understand different cultures, and approach this as having a global perspective. Yes, that you don't solve global problems with a provincial mindset.
I guess just to finish up on your personal agenda, what activities, and I'll see if any other questions come in, but it'd be good to hear what's your vision for yourself and your term. I think you're running for re-election soon. But in terms of your priorities that you're working on a daily basis, it'd be interesting to hear your.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciated this opportunity. I'm focused on several things. First, to invest in science and technology. This crisis has shown us that we need to have better public health infrastructure, better investment in science and technology in this nation. We're invested 0.6% of GDP in science and technology compared to 2% at the height of the Cold War. We need to recommit to the CDC, the NIH, and have science and technology hubs across America in collaboration with our great research universities that spawn innovation. We need to understand that there's a need for a global perspective to global problems. No country can solve pandemics as an island, and America needs to reassert our global leadership to make sure that our values of transparency, our values of international cooperation are the ones that shape the 21st century, and I'm pushing on that end. And most immediately, we need to have effective aid to those who need it, who are losing their homes, or businesses at the risk of going under. We have to support them so that we don't have a very prolonged recession. As it is, we're going to see 40% drop in GDP, 40% in one quarter. That's staggering, and I'm doing everything I can to make sure we inject this economy with sufficient support so we can start to see some recovery in Q3, Q4, and get the unemployment under 20%.
Well, that's I think a very positive note, other than the 40%. To finish on, Yanni, I will hand the meeting back over to you. I think you're going to comment on future programs. But before I turn it back to you, Yanni, thanks again, Congressman Ro Khanna.
Thanks, Brian. This is great.
When are you coming back to California, by the way? I don't know if you're grounded.
Well, I'm back in D.C. now for the votes, but there's not much value to me flying back and forth and exposing people until health folks and the county think it's worth coming back, but I'm doing everything remotely in the meantime.
Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
You bet. Yanni?
Hi, thanks, Brian. Thank you, Ro. So actually, we still have some questions at the Q&A. We are going to publish the unanswered question on the HKANC website afterward. And I would like to invite you all to join our upcoming webinar next week, which is the Hong Kong in response of COVID-19 on the May 19, 4 p.m. And we also have another webinar the week after about the new employment, law exposures, and considerations arising from the COVID-19 pandemic on the May 27, 4 p.m. So if you have any questions about the upcoming webinar, you can always reach out to me, or you can always visit our website at www.hkanc.com, or following us on Facebook and Instagram at hkanc.sf. And I would also like to take this opportunity to remind you this webinar is recorded, and the recording will be uploaded on our website later on. So thank you again. Thank you, Brian. Thank you all. And thank you, all the audience. Please have a great day and stay safe and take care.
Thank you.